the last lesson, we actually were going through the factors that nullify wudu. Right. So, do we finish it? No, we didn't. We just finished the first part, the first one. Right. So, anything that exists from either the front or the rear private parts, whether it's wind or anything else, right? So, I actually went through the matter of the discharge. We finished that now. Regards to wind, I mentioned about wind. So, regards to wind, right? Wind can come from the womb, it can come from the anus, right? So, wind that is from the anus, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said there has to be sound or smell. So if there's no sound, if there's no smell, then you ignore it. It is a play of shaitan. And you literally you ignore it. You ignore it. The more you give it attention, the more he will play with you. And that's disgusting, right? So he plays with the anus of the human being to make them think that they have gas coming out. With regards to the womb, with regards to the womb, do not do not misunderstand the wind that comes from the womb, with bubbles that are being let out from the discharge. Right. So for most women, we don't actually get wind from the womb. Like most women don't get it. Only like for women who have like just given birth, they have just finished nifas, or they have some form of infection. Na'udzubillah, may Allah protect us, right, in their wombs, right? So these are reasons why gas can form within the womb. Right? But naturally, there should not be any gas. Unlike the anus, because the anus it is entire passage to the mouth, right? So when you consume foods and the foods enter into your intestines, of course, if you have different, mixtures of foods, like they begin to produce gas, right? And these gases will collect right in the intestines and then come out through the rectum, and that's how the gas comes from because the entire alimentary canal, right, or the digestive system, right, is two is there's an input and there's an output, right? With regards to the womb, there is no input. The womb is like a dead end, right? The womb is a dead end, and of course it produces blood, right? For the nurturing of a child in the womb, right? But there is no input into the womb. So by right, there should not be any gas coming out from the womb, unless there are situations that happen to a woman, like what we mentioned, infections. So infections, bacterial infections inside the vagina or even in the womb, which is dangerous actually, can cause for gases to be produced and to be let out, right? And these gases come out, in with a whoosh, right? In abundance. They come out in abundance, right? And you can feel them, in abundance coming out. For those who has given birth or had multiple births, and just finished their nifas, this is also a possibility that will cause for gas to come out from the womb because of the folds of the womb. All right. But beyond this, right, most women should not be experiencing any gas from the womb. Right. What happens to most women, I think they call it queef or something. There's a word for it, queef. For what happens with most women, right, is that they because they have a lot of discharge, we have a lot of discharge around our private parts, especially when you're in your ovulation period, in your fertile period, it gets more moist, right, around your private parts. Right. So in your day-to-day movement, right, the air from the external environment get captured within the viscous nature, right, of your discharge, right? So this becomes bubbles, right? They form bubbles, right, in your discharge, right? So as you move, you ruku and you sujood, right, this gas, these bubbles get released, right? And so you think that they have gas coming up from your privates, but it's not gas, but it's not gas from the womb, right? But it's gas from the external environment that got trapped in your discharge, and now it's being released. Okay, it's nothing. It's nothing. It counts for nothing. It does nothing. It doesn't break your wudu. It's nothing. Just ignore it. Okay, just ignore the bubbles like that form and then move. As you go into ruku and sujud. I literally just ignore it. Okay, no, that's all. That's all. Okay, not complicated whatsoever. All right. So, mashallah. And again, we go with the words of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. If there is no sound, if there is no smell, then it is nothing. And you literally ignore it, right? Because it is the play of shaitan. And especially if these gases begin to bother you whenever you takbir, you want to pray. And the moment you takbir and you wanted to, and you begin your prayer, you're going to sujood in the ruku', these things prop up, right? They come up, right? And they bother you. But when you're not praying, you don't appear. And when you're not praying, they're not bothering you. They don't happen when you're not praying. This is very, very, very strong indication that it is a play of shaitan, right? When this happens. Alhamdulillah. Okay. With regards to Allahumma salli wa sallim barik alayhi wa ala alihi, so number one is we're okay. Number one is okay. Right. Number two, loss of intellect. Let's go to number two, okay? Let me see if there are any footnotes here. Um right. So even with something that is uncommon that comes out through a person's private parts, so basically, as we mentioned, there are three exits. Like for a woman, for men there are two exits. For a woman there are three exits. For women will be the exit where urine goes through, and then the other exit is where menses goes through, and the last exit is where fecal matter go through. Right. So all of these are where things would like exit from a human being. So it's regardless of what exited, right? Whether it's natural or unnatural, right? Whatever exited from the human being, right? This will cause for a nullification of wudu. Except it says semen here, but what is the correct term is mani, which is sexual fluid, right? Which both men and women have. For women, I don't know how they can differentiate, how is differentiated between mani and mazi. Mazi is arousal fluid. I think it just mixes up together. Unless someone does get sexual emissions without getting arousal fluid. Maybe that's possible. Allahu Alam. Many people go through that. I don't know. Right, possible. Okay, and if they can differentiate it anyway, if money comes out, you're in junu, right? It's janaba. So instead of having to do wudu, you have to do ghusl. You have to go and take a bath, right? To remove the janaba. Now, number two, loss of intellect. I actually need to answer some questions on the Padlet. Some very important questions on the Padlet. Remember. Let me see. Before I go to number two, let me open up the Padlet. Anyone has a link to the Padlet so I can answer the question. I saw a few questions coming in, which I have not answered. It's been there for some time. If anyone has a link to the Padlet, I don't know why it's closed on my tab. Anyone has, I have the Howlet link open, but I don't have the normal link open. Do you all have it? Let me see. It should be on my email as well. Allah, Alhamdulillah. No one has it. Let me check my email. It should be on my email. So someone asked a question. Let me see. Padlet. Okay, okay, let me share this. Uh, how do I? Hmm, how do I go to the main page? Never mind. Okay, here's link there. Come on. Let me share my screen. There was a very important question that was asked about Subo. I should have answered it early on, but I keep forgetting about it. Um, you can put your questions here. I think last week there a question. Someone asked a question last week. I think Amira, you sent to me, right? That was the question that you sent to me last week. Okay. Is it permissible to shave, wax your hair on your arm, legs, toes, etc.? Yes, it's permissible. You can do so. There's no problem doing that. Okay, will a wife go to the hellfire if the husband does not forgive her, even the wife trying to be the one who wants to be? Okay, this will be Allah will be the judge for this, right? So it's not that she automatically goes to the hellfire. Nobody dictates who goes to hell, who goes to heaven. Nobody, not even parents, right? No one dictates who goes to hell, who goes to heaven, except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So Allah will be the ultimate judge. If Allah knows that you are doing what is right, then that's what it is. You're doing what is right. Okay. Mm. Interesting question. Answer is yes. You can wear toe socks if you want to. Right? You want to wear socks with sandals, you can do that as well if you want to. Regards to the loss of hoof, this will be loss of hoof. Okay, you're talking about hoof. I will go through it. Okay, I will go through inshallah. It's coming up in the lessons about the laws of khuf. I don't want to answer quickly, because it's the entire law. There are laws around it, and if anybody wants to use a khuf, beware, right? So be aware and know and study, learn how to use a khuf before you use a khuf. I know nowadays, ya Allah, so many people are taking laws of khuf on regular socks, and that is not valid. You cannot do that. You can't do loss of hoof on regular socks. People go for Umrah, they go for Hajj, and they think that they have done wudu by doing it on regular socks. It's not valid. Not valid. It has to be, there are conditions to the hoof. Like, and if you have not studied the laws, then go and study the laws, right? It's in my other fit classes, I have gone through it as well. But, and I also go through it in my Umrah classes. If you go into my YouTube, there's an Umrah course. In the Umrah course, I go through the laws of Huf. Right, so learn it there, inshallah. Right. But basically, this is a short answer, English answer anyway. Right, if you have fulfilled the conditions of Huf, and that what you are wearing is a valid Huf, right? Then the way to perform wudu is to perform wudu fully. Then when you come to your feet, you just wipe one time, not three times, one time on the top of your foot. You don't wash your feet. I see people washing their feet. The whole point is not to wash your feet. The whole point is to wipe the top of the foot. But again, your hoof has to be a valid hoof. Okay, I'm gonna emphasize that strongly. There was a question about salat subuh, right? What's the question about salat subuh? Anybody saw the question? Uh, where is it? It should be in white still, right? Nah, is this one? Okay, there's a question here also. Is it permissible to do wudu during menses as it brings you comfort when you feel angry during your menses? Right? It is not permissible. That is true. In the Shafi'i madhab, it is haram for a woman to do wudu during her menses. Haram. In the Hanafi madhab, it is permissible. However, if you find yourself, going into anger, when you're on your menses, do salawat. Right? Just sit down. You can take a shower if you want. If you want to cool yourself down, go and take a shower. For me, I hold on to the law of the Shafi'i madhab, whereby it is impermissible. It's haram for women on menses, to do wudu. You can take other masas if you want to, but for me, I will stick to the Shafi'i madhab. There are, other opinions in the Shafi'i madhab that also permit it if there are, other intentions like himaya meaning protection, right, and so on. But again, the scholars say there are many ways. There are many other ways that you can take. Like there is not, that does not require to perform wudu. Like for example, doing salawat. I sit down, get a tasbih. I sit down and do salawat. I do 100, 200, 300, 500, 1,000. I am very sure that if you sit down and do 500 salawats, you will come down. Okay, you will. I don't think it's possible, right, for you to boil up and get more angry while doing a 500 salawats. I don't think it's possible at all, right? So do your salawats, or take a shower. I take a shower, you got to cool yourself down, take a shower, take a walk. Like there are many ways of doing this. Take a walk with some Quran. You're on your Mexican Quran, right? Okay, so take a walk. Bring your tasbih with you. Listen to some azkar, some salawat. It will definitely calm you down. Then go and take a walk. Then sit down, lie down, sleep. Right, do something. Right, there are many ways to bring down your anger without having to go into a difference of opinion with regards to taking wudu for on menses. Okay, right, so it is a sunnah to stay away from khilaf. Right, it is a sunnah to stay away from khilaf. This is the question that I was looking for. Okay, she heard from a teacher, and I'm not sure who is his teacher because I will have to speak to this person, right? There's no such thing as praying a prayer before the prayer time, with the exception of taqdeem. Jama' taqdeem for a traveler, only for a traveler, they can bring the prayer in earlier. You can jama' asar into zuhr, you can jama' isha into maghrib, and even then there are conditions of travel, right, and the conditions of the prayer. With regards to subuh, there is no such thing as bringing subuh forward, right? So I don't know who is the teacher and what is the what call they are taking, or what opinion they are taking. As far as I know, there is no valid opinion. As far as I know, Allah Alam. right? There is no valid opinion of praying a prayer before the coming in of the prayer. Right? If your work requires you to leave here for your work before Subuh at 5:50 a.m., you will have to find a place to stop and perform the prayer, which means maybe you have to leave at 5 o'clock, right? And then as you come closer to your workplace, is there a masjid nearby, right? That you can drop by, pray to Rakat Subuh, and then go to your work. All right. So which means you gotta leave earlier because you're taking this particular job that requires you 2 hours of travel, right? And you have to leave your house at 5:30 in the morning, right? Then you gotta put in some time in your travel time for you to stop, do 2 rakats, and then go to work. Of course, the best situation is that so halfway through as you're traveling, right, so maybe around 6:30, right, you stop. Wherever you're traveling, you stop, get off the MRT, get off the bus, right, go to a nearest, masjid. Look at your journey. I'm sure there's a masjid somewhere. If you're in Singapore, I'm sure there's a masjid somewhere from your home, right, to your workplace, from the time you leave your home to the time you reach your workplace, right? And in between there is subuh time, right? I'm sure there's a masjid somewhere. You got to factor in the timing to stop, go to the masjid or go to any prayer place. If there are prayer places at your workplace itself, then you can aim to reach there earlier. Well, of course, much earlier. Like if you're supposed to reach there at 7:30, then maybe you have to reach there around 6:45, right? So which will require for you to leave your home earlier. So basically, you got to work this out. You got to if you want to have that job 2 hours from your home, right? And you have to be there by 7:30, right? Subuh is not compromisable. It's not compromisable. You cannot pray before the prayer time at all. You cannot. It's just not valid. If you've been doing that, then the prayer before the prayer time becomes a qada of the previous day, right? And it's counted that you missed subuh for that day. It's counted, right? And you missed subuh for that day, and it's a kabair. It's of the major sins, right? So factor it in lah. So if you want this job, you gotta put in the effort, right? To factor in time to pray subuh. Get off the MRT, go to a place wherever you can go. It's 2 rak'ats, do it, right? And get back on the MRT and continue your journey, right? Factor in half an hour. So maybe leave your home around 5 o'clock, right, in the morning, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant you barakah in your time. And maybe it's good training to also start waking up earlier, right, and performing your tahajjud and so on. Right. So that is my advice, right? That you first and foremost you can't pray subuh before it's time. You can't miss subuh also. If you travel 2 hours, 13 half an hour more, so 2.5 hours, stop, get off the vehicle that you're on, find a place, pray 2 rakats, get back on. Okay, I gotta figure something out. Let me see. Is everything else covered? Now continue my fiqh class. Okay, alhamdulillah. It's all covered. Was there a question last week? I think Amira sent me a question last week. Is it? Did you send me a question last week, Amira? No. I think there was someone who asked a question. I think during Hababa's lesson as well, there was a question which I did not read. But I saw it pop up, and then I went to school. Right. So if you can post it on Padlet so that I can see it. Tamam. Okay, خلاص, let's continue our fiqh. So the second matter that nullifies wudu is a loss of consciousness, right? Loss of consciousness, which basically for most people it happens with sleep. Right? So unless you feel unconscious, loss of intellect also includes going into junun, meaning basically going into it, like you will say, an insanity, right? But not so much insanity, but basically being unaware of one's surroundings, right? It could be from illness, from you'll say old age, right? Dementia and so on. So all different ways of loss of intellect, right? But the main way that most people go through, right, it is sleep, right? That's where we lose our intellect or lose it's called the wa'i, right? The wa'i meaning that your senses, you lose your senses when you fall asleep. So number two, this is 34. So meaning loss of the ability to distinguish. Okay, at this point we have to distinguish between sleep and sleepiness. All right, sleep and sleepiness. So when someone is sleepy, it's got nas or nuas. right? In Arabic, and when someone is sleepy, you're not asleep yet. Your mind might not be able to comprehend what's happening around you, but for as long as your ears are, are able to hear the surroundings around you, you have not fallen asleep, but you are sleepy. You're dozing off. You're dozing off. This is important, and because let's say you are seated, and or you are leaning. Because seated you can sleep, right? If you're leaning, and you're listening to a lecture and you find yourself dozing off. You find yourself you're nodding, right? But you can still hear the people around you speaking. But you can't make sense of what they're saying, but you can hear them. Okay, you have not fallen asleep. Your wudu is your wudu is intact. Your wudu has not been nullified. But of course, it's a very I would say risky situation because you can't it's very hard to draw the line. Did you actually fall asleep? Like, were there actually lapses in your hearing? Because sleep is known by hearing. At the moment you're unable to hear, the first thing that happens when you fall asleep is that your sense of hearing is blocked. Right? Your body will block your sense of hearing. Right? So you can't hear what's happening around you when you are asleep. As Allah says in Surah Kahfi about the people of the cave, that Allah, place a barrier over their ears. Right? And so they can't hear. And of course, when you wake up from your sleep, that's when you hear your alarm. Your alarm will ring first, then your sense of hearing comes back, then you begin to hear the alarm, then you wake up, right, from sleep. Now, right, so this is the thing about sleepiness, and about sleep. But for me personally, the moment if I'm sleepy, and I find myself, nodding off, dozing off, and I'm not firmly seated on my seat, I will take it as my wudu is nullified. Because you can't tell if you did fall asleep. If you really did fall asleep, your mind actually, went blank. Mashallah. Okay, about sleep itself, all right? So the loss of intellect nullifies wudu, right? Through seven other causes, except sleep, which is firmly seated on the ground. So what is this, condition for sleep of someone who is firmly seated on the ground? First thing first, your seat, meaning your behind, right, has to be firm on the ground. Like there are conditions for this. A person has to be, معتدل في يعني خلقه. Right? They have to be regular size. So you can't be extremely, overweight, right? Nor can you be extremely underweight, right? But they have to be in the middle. And most human beings are in the middle, right? So extreme overweight, like are those like human beings that are really they have a lot of flesh, right? A lot of flesh, right? So it goes into like you will say maybe 200 kilograms, weight, that kind of thing, right? So really, really heavy human beings, right? Okay, these people, right? They can't preserve their wudu while seated and sleeping. They cannot, right? Because of the amount of flesh, that is, in their behind, right? And that elevates, it causes sort of an elevation of the anus, which allows for gas to pass to escape if they fall asleep. Also, compared to those who are incredibly skinny, right? So skinny to the point whereby there's no flesh, right, on their behind, and they are still on bones. And it means people who are really, you say, starving human beings, right? And so for these kind of people, right, there's nothing to prevent the gas from coming out, right, as they fall asleep. So the whole thing is that when you fall asleep, right, how about Mariam should always say, when the eyes close, the anus opens, right? When the eyes close, the anus opens. And it's true. How many people, let out gas while they are asleep? All human beings let out gas when they are asleep. Right. But if you are seated, then the flesh, right, in your behind, it stops the gas from coming out. Okay, so that's the first thing. The first condition is the body of the human being must be average. Cannot be too fleshy, right? It means in an excessive form of fleshiness, and it cannot be too skinny to the point that is no flesh. Okay, on that principle. Secondly, is that the bottom has to be firm on the ground. Right. So, for example, like right now, I'm sitting in a tawarruk position. Right now, I'm sitting in a tawarruk position. Right. I'm not firmly on the ground. Tawarruk is basically when you sit during at the end of tahiyat. right? Or in iftirash position, right? So you're not firmly on the ground, okay, in the situation. If your legs are folded beneath you, right? If you have lifted your knees in front of you and you're hugging your knees, right? If you are leaning against a pillar, right, and part of your, your bottom is lifted because of the way you're leaning, right? If you're leaning forward in an aeroplane seat, right? If you're leaning forward in an aeroplane seat, and the back of your bum is lifted, right? So these are all, examples of your seat not being firm, right, on the ground, on the chair, or whatever you're sitting on. It has to be firm down, right? If you have caused your seat to go into an incline, right, the seat on the airplane or the bus, you make it go into an incline, right, backwards, and you fall asleep, right, then your seat is again not firmly, not firm on the ground. Right, so it has to be firm. Right. So for example, if you're sitting cross-legged if your back straight. Okay, that means you're not leaning forward or backward, right? Or you're sitting on an aeroplane seat, your legs are down, but your behind is firm on the seat, right? And you have not caused for an incline backwards or forward, right? That kind of situation, even if you're inclined slightly with your head to the left, because maybe you're resting your head on something, right? That kind of position, your wudu is intact. And so your seat must be firm on the seat that you are sitting on. Okay. Third condition is this is number two. Third condition is that nobody informed you, and nobody who is trustworthy informed you that you actually pass gas. Okay, so even if you have the first two conditions, checked, right? If you woke up from your sleep and it's really sleep, okay, it's not sleepiness, it's actual sleep. You can dream, you can it's proper sleep, right? But as long as you maintain that position, yes, there is a condition that you wake up in that position. This is number three. Number three is you wake up in that position. So, for example, I want to sleep. Okay, I'm in the aeroplane. I want to sleep. I don't want to break my wudu because I want to pray subuh later on the airplane. I don't want to go to the bathroom. Okay, but I want to sleep. Okay, so you come to the airplane, around 9 o'clock, you pray Isha, you have your wudu, now you're sleepy. You don't want to break your wudu. So you sit down on the airplane, you buckle yourself in, you keep your seat upright. Okay, you keep your seat upright. Like you don't allow yourself to lean forward nor backward. Okay, if you're that desperate to keep your wudu, right? So you fall asleep. Okay, and for me, I can do that. Right, you have a lot of training in NUS to sleep sitting upright. Right. So you cross your arms. So for me, I will cross my arms in front of me to prevent myself from leaning forward or backward. I'll cross my arms and I'll sleep. If I wake up with my body having shifted, all right, if I wake up with my body leaning forward or leaning to the side or the backwards or whatever, I find that my body had shifted while I was asleep, that already nullifies the wudu. Right? Because in the shifting of the body, there is a possibility of gas coming out. Okay, right? That's number three. So you must wake up in the state that you fell asleep in. Okay, you must wake up in the same state. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barik alayk. The fourth condition is no one told you. All right, that's the fourth condition. Okay. Okay, Amira. Right. So third condition is that you woke up in the state that you fell asleep in. Right. Fourth condition, right, is that no one informed you that you passed gas, right, upon waking up. Right. And the person who spoke to you is someone who is trustworthy, not someone trying to play a prank on you. Right. I hope no one does that. But if there's someone who you suspect they're just messing with you, right, then you have reason to not believe them, then you cannot believe them if you don't want to. But for me, even if they are known for pranking, I will still believe them and take wudu again, right? Because you don't want to have your prayer to be not counted, right? Might as well just go and take wudu again, correct? Right? But if let's say someone informed you, even though you had all first three conditions fulfilled, right, but the moment someone informs you, you have to go and perform wudu again. All right. That is number two. All right. That's all for number two. Number three, skin to skin contact between an adult, non-mahram, marriageable male and female without any barrier. Okay, there is an issue here with the word adult, right? The word, I think the word adult is not an accurate translation, right? The Arabic will say kabirin, right? So التقى البشرين كبيرين كبيرين أجنبيين bila ha'il, that's the Arabic, right? So the skin contact of two kabir, right? And the word kabir, I change the word adult, just put word kabir, just put kabir. I know I explain the word kabir, right? So just change the word adult, right? So the word kabir, right? It is so he puts a footnote here to try and qualify what he means by adult. It means the age that usually stirs up sexual desire in a person. Wudu will not break if it is found in one of the two, right? So what does it mean by kabir? Kabir is not baligh. Okay, first rule, kabir does not necessarily mean baligh. That's the first rule. Okay, kabir does not necessarily mean baligh. That's the first rule. Second rule is that kabir, right, means this human being has taken on a form in their bodies, right, that can incite sexual desire. That can, right, that can incite sexual desire, right? So, for example, a young boy who's not baligh, right, but he has, he has like a manly feature to him, right? And there are boys that are like they're kabir. They're not baligh, they are kabir, right? Like usually this is around the age of 9, 10 years old. They might go into a body whereby they are big boys, right? And for such boys, right, there are rules around these boys, right? So they're not baligh, but they understand the woman body. They do, right? They've come to understand male and female, and they can incite a shahawat, or they can incite desire in the adults that are around them. That's how pedophilia happens. Right? Wala hawla wala quwwata illa billah. Allah protect our children. Right? There are girls are more prone to this. Right? So girls, very young, girls who move into a body that is quite womanly, right? And they have not reached puberty, right? But there is a sexual a sense, right, with regards to their bodies, which can incite sexual desire, right, in a man. It can possibly do that, which is why we have to be very vigilant, very careful, and guard over our children, right, and teach them to guard over themselves, right, because there are people who have sick hearts, and they look at children and they have their shahawat rise up, right, when you look at children. Wala hawla wala quwwata illa billah. Right. So usually most of our teachers, they will put this age to be the age of 7. Okay, for me, I take the age of 7. Age of 7. I will take 7 years old. Right. And I will teach my students who are primary one, to not the boys, to not salam me, do not come and shake my hand. And I will teach them that once you're primary one, you don't come to Ustazah and salam her, but you come to me and you greet me. You come to me without giving your hand. You say Assalamu alaikum Ustazah, and how are you? Okay, so I will teach them. You say it like that to me. If you see me, don't ignore me because I'm there, I'm your teacher. Don't ignore me. Come to me, say Assalamu alaikum Ustazah, how are you? Okay, and you can go off. Okay, I'll reply you and then you can go off. All right. But do not give me your hand. Okay, and do not touch me as well. Right, because I want to preserve my wudu. All right. It's not sinful to say, right, unless it was done by sexual desire, of course, and the sin falls on the adults, because the adult can carry sin. The child can't carry sin. Right. But it nullifies your wudu. Okay, and nullifies your wudu. Right. So I used to teach in Masjid Khalid. And really whenever I teach a primary one class, yeah, Allah, so hard to keep my wudu, because they keep touching you. They keep taking your, when they take the marker, they touch you. When they take your, when they take your books, they touch you. The kids are very, they're not sensitive towards these things, because they don't keep their wudu, right? They will claim they have wudu 24/7, right? But they don't actually have wudu. They touch all kinds of people, and they don't even realize they are touching people, mashallah. But for me, I put the age at 7. Okay, I draw the line at 7. There are other people who say 9, right? 9 years old. I would say 9 maximum, right? 9 maximum, don't go past 9, right? So 7, 9. I know of certain ulama they will go by as young as 5, right? 5 years old, they will not touch, children of the opposite gender. And that is safe. That is safe, right? It is safe, to stay away from this. Um, so I would say 7 is a good age, right? To draw a line and to teach them. You've come into Tamis, you come to 7 years old, you need to know boundaries, right? The children, they must know boundaries. And this actually protects them. It protects them from people who might harm them. So at 7, okay, in fact 5 is a good age, 5. Right? No one's to touch you. And of course teach them, of course the areas whereby no one is to touch them at all at their private areas. But with regards to skin contact, show respect. So when you come for Hari Raya, when you come for Eid, go up to elderly people, right, who are not your mahram, and greet them greet them, okay, without, giving your hand, greet them. And if the parent can be there to explain, then do a gentle explanation, all right, that I am teaching my child, right, who are his mahram, right, and so I'm teaching him not to not to hold the hands of those who are not mahram to him, but to respect them, like in greeting them, coming up to them and talking to them, making small talk with them. You teach them to do that, right, and that is more polite actually, to go and give a greeting and to ask them how they are, ask them if they want water, if they need anything, how can I be of service to you, right, and so on. Okay, that is called kabir. That is called kabir. Okay, so kabir is anywhere between the ages of 5 to 9, according to different opinions of scholars. It's not baligh. All right. So many women, and the law of the kabir is not just limited to wudu, but it extends into aurat, into our aura, right? So for a woman to not expose her aura in front of a boy who is kabir, all right? But what aura should you cover is called auratul mihna. And auratul mihna is an aura that is not 100% aura, but you say it's a 90%. Right? So for example, auratul mihna is, and I'll explain what it is. Auratul mihna, it is in front of boys who are kabir, right? Not baligh. Baligh, they are men. Halas, they are men. Okay, they are baligh, right? But they're not baligh. They are kabir. So boys, they are kabir, and also non-Muslim women, and also Muslim women who are not trustworthy. Okay, right? Non-Muslim women, whether or not they are trustworthy, the law is non-Muslim. No, in our era, our teachers have included in this matter Muslim women who are not trustworthy, meaning they will take videos, they will take pictures, and they will spread your aura. Right. So if you're in a situation whereby this is going to happen, then for you to cover your aura. So what is auratul mihna? Auratul mihna is basically the aura that that you cover, that enables you to do like physical work, for example. So for example, um covering the hair, yes, it is part of auratul mihna to cover the hair. If some hair shows bit here and there, a few strands here and there, that's okay. Right, that's okay. It's not like a full, strict covering of the aura, right? With regards to the sleeves, if you wear up to three-quarter sleeves, right, and not a full sleeve, or you wear a sleeve whereby it's baggy and you don't wear like a hand sock, under the sleeves, that's fine, right? That's fine. It's auratu mihna, right? Not wearing socks, that's fine, right? It's auratu mihna, right? So for example, if I'm in the home and my husband's nephew comes over. Okay, but right now his nephews are all baligh, right? But when they were not baligh, right, my husband's nephews, right, when they came over and they were not baligh, right, for me, I'll just put on a shawl, right, over my head to cover my hair, right? I usually wear long sleeves anyway in the home, right? I might not wear socks, okay, and I might walk around with his nephews there, right, and that's fine, okay. But if his brother comes, my brother-in-law, okay, and he's of course a man, for that, I will fully cover myself, because he is not mahram to me. Right? There's the difference there. So if you have young boys coming to your house, usually like your cousins' children, they're not mahram to you. Who else would come to your house? Maybe if you're giving tuition, right? You have young boys coming to your house for tuition, right? In this age, they're all kabir, meaning they're above the age of 9 at the very least. All right. Of course, if you judge from the age of 7, then from the age of 7, I see children as well. And when they come to my house, I would ensure that I'm covered auratul mihna, like without the socks. But if I know that amongst them are those that have reached puberty, usually when they go past 9, I'll just cover fully. Because it could be that these boys have reached puberty and they're not telling anybody. Possible, right? It's possible. They could have reached puberty already. They're not telling anyone, right? So usually by nine and up, I'll cover myself fully. But usually, if they're not baligh, or depending on how who these students are, I might not wear the niqab in front of them. I said depending, on the issue of the students. MashaAllah. Like so these are all different forms of, aura. Different of aura, different groups of human beings. So kabir, be clear of what is kabir. Okay, be clear of what is kabir. So if your skin comes in contact with this kabir, it nullifies your wudu. This is the Shafi'i madhab. Of course, people, know so many people know about the Hanafi madhab regards to this matter, because in the Hanafi madhab it does not nullify wudu. But if you want to take in the Hanafi madhab, you need to study the Hanafi madhab properly so you can apply the law properly. Tamam. Um, without any barrier, right? So without any barrier, so this means that 37, it's 37. So this so without any barrier, so basically, if a doctor, for example, wearing gloves, and doctors should be wearing gloves, right? They're wearing gloves and they hold your arm and they're going to put an injection in you or whatsoever, or they are testing you, but they're wearing gloves, then okay, your wudu is preserved, right? Because there's gloves, there are gloves, right? There's no problem with that. Touching the hair, teeth, and nails, right? Toenails, fingernails, does not nullify wudu, right? So I say, how would it happen? Right? It is possible that it might happen with your husband, for example. Because you were like, what man, that can break my wudu, would touch my hair, teeth, or nails? Your husband, who else, right? Right? Because everybody else is mahram to you. Anyone who can come that close to you to touch your hair, your nails, or your teeth, right, are probably mahram to you, right? Except with the exclusion of your husband, right? Dentists will have gloves. Right? If your dentist not having gloves, is a problem, okay? I don't go to a dentist who's not wearing gloves. Right? They should be having gloves, okay? They shouldn't be touching, your teeth with their fingers. It should be with tools, right? Anyway, they should be having gloves. I don't think they'll touch the mouth of another human being with bare skin, right? Not possible. It's disgusting also anyway. Um, so your husband, so it happened to me before. So I was praying with him, and after I finished praying, for some reason, I think he leaned backward, and my thumb was right where his hand rested, and his basically his skin just touched my nail, the nail of my thumb. Interestingly enough, it didn't touch my skin at all. Just touched the nail. It was so like a close shave. So the wudu is preserved, right? Because he touched the nail, right? Or if let's say, he goes by you, then he strokes your head, for example, if your husband does that, which my husband does. Like he goes by and he strokes your head, and your hair, I mean, of course, you have hair lah on your head, right? You have hair. Right? So he touches the hair, right? And not the skin of the head. If you have thick enough hair, he's only touching the hair, right? And it does not nullify your wudu. Now, in the Shafi'i mazhab. Barakallahu fikum. Now, any other thing to mention? No, it's all okay. It should be fine. There are questions that people will ask. What if you accidentally touch someone of the opposite gender? Your wudu is still nullified. Full stop. Your wudu is still nullified, even if it's by accident in the Shafi'i madhab. Okay, if you go for Umrah, right? If you go for Umrah, the issue of Umrah, right? Can are surgeons allowed to do that? Is that protocol? Are they allowed? They're not, right? It's against the law. You can't do that. And as far as I know, you have to use tools. You can't use your hands straight in, right? I don't think you're allowed to do that. You can be sued, isn't it? Any doctors here? Any surgeons here? Can you actually take off your gloves? Are you allowed to do that? I don't doctors to scrub in. The scrub in, they have to be completely, right. They have to be sanitized and whatsoever. Correct. So they don't bring in infection. I don't think it's allowed. I don't even think it's allowed. Right. You want to feel what? But I don't think it's allowed. It's against the law. Go check it out. It's against the law. It should be against the law. you know. In any case, someone in surgery is not conscious, right? So the wudu khalas. There's no wudu. What wudu are you talking about? Right? If someone's gonna open you up and touch your organs, I highly doubt you are in full consciousness. I highly doubt you are in full consciousness. Right. Right. So I don't think that's a possible situation where you're preserving your wudu while going through surgery. You know, such a weird situation, right? So question here is an important question. Is considered considers with special needs certified wudu? The answer is yes. The answer is yes. It nullifies wudu. There is no condition of the kabir to have an aql. There is no condition. Right? And in fact, I do have cousins, family members who have autism. They have shahawat. They do. Right? They have shahawat. And the caregivers must be very careful. Right? They do explore sexuality. They do have shahawat. Okay. So as caregivers, right, to these special needs people, special needs human beings, right, it does nullify your wudu, right? You can is so if you do touch them to handle them, it's not sinful. I'm not saying it's sinful, right? But it nullifies your wudu. Okay, it nullifies your wudu. Right? They do have shahawat. I have a cousin that he does have shahawat, and it's it is you need a lot of you need to know how to handle them with their shahawat, right? Because they have noticed women, and especially if at home they're not being monitored, there are those who do watch videos, right? And they watch videos of shahawat, right? And that is of course unfair to them because they are autistic, right? The sin is on the parents, right? They allow for that, but unfortunately there are those, right? And the danger here is that they can go and harm, you know, young girls, molest them, or do even worse things, and they don't know. They don't know. They don't know how to control themselves. The responsibilities on the adults, right, who are around them, who are supposed to help them, right? But I have met autistic men, right? Autistic men, right? Who unfortunately, the people around them do not realize that they have shahwat. And they've transgressed, right? But it's not sin on them. They don't know. They don't know. Okay. Now, now, right. So with regards to the to Umrah, right? Right. In regards to Umrah, for women, it's actually quite easy for us to maintain our wudu. Just keep your hands inside of your big hijab. You should be wearing like a big jilbab or something for Umrah, or a telekom, a prayer garment. Right. Wear a big hijab. For me, I wear a big hijab. You keep your hands underneath, right? Just cross your hands, underneath. You're wearing socks. Uh, How would someone nullify your wudu unless you touch your face, right? For women, I don't find it difficult at all to keep my wudu while doing tawaf in the Shafi'i madhab. For men, because they wear ihram and a lot of their skin is exposed, it's very hard for men, right, to keep their wudu because people keep bumping into them. So therefore, when they go for umrah, you do take on a Hanafi madhab, right? So you hold your keys during tawaf, right? Hold them. You can hold them without touching anybody, right? You can hold their arm or something, right? Keep it close to you without touching anybody. It's possible. It can be done. I hold my husband when I do tawaf. I do hold my husband. Um, uh, without nullifying my wudu, and I hold his arm without nullifying my wudu. During tawaf, it's possible. But of course, you can go into the Hanafi madhab if you want to, right? But if you go into the Hanafi madhab, you gotta make sure that your wudu is done in the Hanafi madhab way, which includes mouth and nose is compulsory, and wiping 1/3 of the head. All right. So the Hanafi method, this Hanafi method and the Shafi method wudu is that the gargling the mouth and sniffing in water into the nose is wajib in the Hanafi madhab, and wiping 1/3 of your head is wajib in the Hanafi madhab. So when you go for Umrah, you do have the choice of taking the Hanafi madhab, right? And doing wudu in that way. There is a position in the Shafi'i madhab, right? That whereby the one who is being touched does not nullify the wudu, whereas the one who is touching nullifies the wudu. Meaning the doer, his wudu is nullified. The done on, the wudu is not nullified. There is an opinion in the Shafi'i madhab, right? And you can go by that opinion when you do tawaf. So it says, so you are not doing you are not going ahead and touching people, but people are touching you, all right? And the Shafi'i madhab, there's an opinion that says it does not nullify wudu. Okay, right. So during Umrah, if you take another madhab, you got to learn the other madhab. Okay, and I just told you all what you have to learn. Lah. Basically, to wash the mouth, the nose, to sniff into the nose, and to wipe the head, one third of the head. Right, that is the Hanafi madhab. Um, mm, Lying down, your wudu nullifies automatically. There is no question about this. If you are lying down and you fell asleep, even if you're flat on your back, your bum is firm on your sofa, at the moment you are inclined, your wudu is nullified. Full stop. There's no question about it. Okay? There's no question. Okay? Right. As I mentioned, there are madhabs you can take. Right, as I mentioned. Barakallahu feekum. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته فاتحة أن الله يرزقنا منافع وأعمالا خالصة من الهدى ويسر به قبل المسلسل وأرواح معلمنا ومشايخنا وذوي علينا وإلى حاضر النبي محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وصحبه وسلم الفاتحة السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته